It's July 22nd, 2021. We're in Deerfield Beach at the beautiful home of recording artist and music educator Melton Mustafa Jr. I understand you were born in Florida and a product of Florida schools.
Hey everyone, first of all I'd like to say it's an honor and pleasure to be here. Thank you. My name is Melton Mustafa Jr. and I'm going to give you a little history of me. Well, I'm a product of Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and I went to Myrtle Grove Elementary, where I took general music with Miss Penny Page, and she taught us how to play the recorder, and the orchestra bells and all that was really nice. And from there, I went to Parkway Middle School, which the great Wayne Hoffman was the band director, but I wasn't in the band there. I didn't get into band until the 9th grade at Miami Carol City Senior High School under the direction of the great Frankie Neal. And there, I took beginning band, and I learned how. It's funny, like, even before I got into band, I remember going into 9th grade and I picked my classes, and when I went home, I told, my mom, what was my classes, and she said, well, what did you pick? And I said, well, I picked PE and weightlifting and something else. And if you know anything about me, my dad's an international artist, played with Count Basie Orchestra and Duke Ellington Band and Sinatra and all of the guys. So my mom was like, you're not in band? Change it right now. So I was kind of upset because, I wanted to play baseball and sports like all the other guys, but she made me get in band, and she was pretty strict. So I said, okay, I'm going to get in band because I don't want to get in trouble. You know how moms are. And it was funny because, I cried about it, but, still mom, so you have to do what what she says or you'll get in trouble. So I changed it on the card, and I went and I enrolled in beginning band at Miami Carol City High School, 9th grade. And I remember sitting there in the band room while everyone was picking their instruments, and we had these index cards, and you pick what instrument you want and what your second instrument is. And I didn't know what instrument to play. I didn't want to be there, so I said, okay, I'm going to pick the easiest class instrument that I could think of. So I looked around and I saw the piano, and I said, surely that has to be the easiest thing in here. It only has white keys and black keys, so I'm going to pick the piano. So I put it down on the card. Everybody was putting it down on the card. And I remember clearly this older guy, his name was Cedric. He was walking around, he was a senior, and he was walking around, hey man, what'd you pick? Hey man, what'd you pick? So I couldn't wait till he came to me, and I looked at, I was like, yeah. He asked me, hey, what are you going to play? And I said, I'm going to play the piano. And I was excited. And he started laughing, like, the piano? You can't play piano in marching band? And I was like, oh yeah. So I said, okay, I can't play piano. Well, what do you think I should play? And so he said, man, you definitely should pick the saxophone because all the girls like saxophone. That's what he said. I didn't know. I was in the 9th grade, so I said, okay, thank you. And I put saxophone down. So that's how I started playing the saxophone. And interesting enough, I took it home, and at the time, my dad was on tour. I think he was on tour with Jaco Pastorius, a famous bass player. He was on tour, so he didn't even know I joined band. And I started playing the saxophone, and I was practice because I just like to practice. And before I knew it, like after a month, I was one of the best in that class. By the next year, I was one of the top in the school, and by the next year, I was like really good player. I practiced a lot, but it's funny. I wouldn't have even picked band in high school unless my mom had said, "You're gonna be in the band. You're gonna be in the band." So
Yay, Mom.
yeah, so my last year there, it was time to start thinking about college, and what college you're going to go to, and what you want to do for a career and things like that. So mind you, from ninth grade to 10th grade, I had been practicing, and I was one of those students that I would get the book and the teacher didn't have to tell me, work on page 1, page 2. I literally started on page 1 and I would finish the book. Literally, I would sit there until I finished the entire book. Every exercise had to be perfect. I didn't know I was doing this at the time, but I came up with my own strategies. I need to play it 3 times perfectly. I want to play it 1 time slowly. I want to play it medium tempo. I want to play it fast. And then I'll go back and play it again, just for kicks and giggles. And I would mark down, I didn't know that these were good drill and practice, things or whatever. I just was like, I like to learn. I like for it to be perfect. But the other thing, while I was going to school at Carol City, is I was inquisitive. So I would go in the back room when nobody was around, and I would just look in the cases just to see what was in it. Look at this case. What is that? Oh, that's a trumpet. But this trumpet looks different from this trumpet. What is that? Oh, that's a cornetto. That's a flugelhorn. And one time I looked in there and I saw this instrument and it had all of these pieces in it. And I was like, what is this? I didn't know. I thought I knew all of the instruments by then. And I went to my band director, Mr. Neal, what instrument is this? And he's like, oh, that's a bassoon. I was like, I was like, well, Mr. Neal, I want to learn how to play the bassoon. So he was like, okay. And he reached over here and he got a book. He gave me the book and it was like, okay, you got to go ahead and work on it. And I was like, yeah. So it was so funny. I went home. I'm so inquisitive. I went home and I couldn't wait to get home. So now I'm carrying a bassoon and the saxophone in my book bag, and you had to walk to school.
Weightlifting.
So I get home and I put it on the case on my bed. I open it up and I look at all these pieces and I'm like, yeah. Wait, how do you put this thing together? So I looked at the music book and it helped, but it didn't help. It had the picture, and if you ever, how it is putting the bassoon together, okay, this goes there, okay, that fits in that hole. It took me so long to put this instrument together, and then I realized I didn't have a reed, I didn't have a seat strap, so I had to go to the music store. I can't remember what store I went to, but I bought a reed, and I literally figured out how to play this instrument. I had the book. I started from the beginning, and as I said before, I would go all the way through the book. So I wouldn't be happy with life until I, figured it out. So I just learned how to play that. I really practice it. And so maybe a week later, I came back to the school. Now, Mr. Neal had forgot I even took the instrument home. He just gave it to me. I don't know if he actually thought I was going to learn it or whatever. So I took it out, and all of the guys in the band was looking around because nobody else played that instrument. Just they didn't. I was the only one. That's probably why I wanted to play it. So I started taking it out. People used to me taking my saxophone out. Because they knew I was learning saxophone. And I took this instrument out and I started playing. So people were looking, and I was like, man, I like this attention. So I played a little bit more, played it faster. And people were looking at me like, where did this come from? How did you learn how to play this instrument? So I started playing it in class, and I learned quickly that I liked playing different instruments, and I tried the flute, I grabbed the clarinet, and luckily Mr. Neal he encouraged that behavior. It's like, yeah, go ahead and do it or whatever. He wasn't pushy with it. He was very supportive. You want to explore, go ahead and do this. It's a book. Make sure you practice or whatever. So I continued playing those instruments, and some reason, band directors, we get they get packages of pamphlets for different youth groups and things like that. And I received one from the Greater Miami Youth Symphony. Well, it wasn't. Mr. Neal gave it to me. He's like, hey, check this out. So I looked at it and I seen kids like playing instruments and they were like happy. I was like, I want to play here. So I called Greater Miami Youth Symphony, and I said, hey, how do you be a part of this organization? Because I was in the inner city school and we wasn't necessarily exposed to those type of things or whatever. And the lady said, well, we have auditions coming up like in a month. And I was like, okay, tell me what to do. So she told me, okay, you have to play these scales, you have to play this audition piece. And I mean, I didn't know about all of that stuff. I mean, I knew about scales or whatever, but so I practiced out of my beginning band book because that's all I had. No, I think at this time I had bought a Rubank and I started going through it. But the long story short, I had only been playing for, a couple of weeks. So I went in for the audition and I didn't notice at the time, but I really sucked really bad. And I don't know, they didn't let me know that I sucked. But I mean, I realized later that I wasn't that good. But I think they felt so sorry for me that they put me in the orchestra, and which was amazing because they had 3 orchestras. They had the elementary, they had the middle orchestra, and then they had the high school, the collegiate, orchestra, which was really, really amazing. And I did the audition, and it was really bad. I only knew one scale, and intonation of the bassoon and all that stuff. I didn't know about it. I was just playing, and I was enjoying what I was doing. And they let me be in the orchestra. All right, I got in, and I was so excited. And so she said, okay, well, you're gonna meet at this time. You have to go to University of Miami. So I had to catch 2 buses, maybe 3 buses, and then the Metro Rail to get to University of Miami, to stay really far from UM. And I remember I was so excited. I was like, college campus, all these musicians. I hear music all around. I was hooked by then. And I was like, I seen one group pack when I passed by, and it was playing. Everybody was into it. I was like, yeah. So they were just warming up, and I saw my room. What room was it? I can't remember it. It's a famous musician. It might be a Fillmore or something like that. That was the name of the room at University.
Yes.
Right? Maybe Fillmore. Right. Yes. I can't remember right now. But I walked in and I was like, well, these kids are young. All right. And now I'm in high school. So I'm thinking I was going to be in a high school group. But my plan was so bad that I didn't even make it into the middle school group. They put me in the elementary group. So I'm there with all these really, really good musicians, but they're in elementary school. And I'm like this high school, kid, playing this big instrument. And oh man, it was so embarrassing because every time I played, the kids were looking at me and they were like, so what the lesson I learned there is I didn't like not being that good. And I definitely didn't like people laughing at me because I knew I was a hard worker. So from that point on, I said, okay, they put me in the lowest group and I'm going to practice them until I get to the top group. And literally, I would practice every day until I auditioned out of that group into the next group, into the next group, until I became first chair, which didn't take me a long time in the top group. But I noticed that, I had a competitive spirit. I wasn't angry or anything. I just I didn't want to be embarrassed, and I wanted to actually be able to play the instrument well. And I just practiced until I eventually got to the point where I could play really well. And we played some serious literature. While we were there, we got lessons. I started studying with Dr. Michael De Gregoria, who I believe he's teaching in Broward County right now still. But he was a fantastic bassoonist, and I think can't remember what orchestra, but it was an orchestra down here, the orchestra down here. And he was, exceptional. So, I started meeting people that was actually, sort of shaping where I was going as a musician and eventually a music educator. So I kept practicing. Eventually, I auditioned to go to Florida A&M University, and I studied music education there under the direction of Dr. William P. Foster, the late great Dr. William P. Foster, amazing composer, director, educator, and Dr. Julian E. White, who's still to this day a great mentor, great support system, and there I studied under John Daniels, Dr. John Daniels, a great clarinetist and saxophonist, and I learned a lot about music, and the thing about college and going to college is when you go away for school, you're usually first chair at your school, all county first chair, and you think you're hot stuff, but when you get into college, you find out, wow, there's so many good musicians and all these different instruments, and then the professors that you're studying with, are so knowledgeable, and they have so many resources, and if you like to learn, it's just like just absolutely amazing. So that experience was really really fantastic, because I learned a lot about music education and child psychology and the instrumental techniques and all the different instruments, all the things that I was interested in. I started learning about those things, and it was absolutely a great experience. I got a chance to march with the famous Marching 100, where I was section leader, and I was part of the show planning committee and the dance routine committee and all of this stuff at Florida A&M University. So I got a lot of hands-on experience as far as being in different bands, ensembles, and different philosophies of teaching. So, from there, I got my first job.
And what was that first job?
My first job, okay, I started at American Senior High School, and I was teaching with, I was assistant to Ruben Cooper, very good trombone player and great musician, and he also studied at Florida A&M University, great musician. That was my first job there, coming out of college, and it was a good experience because, I came into a situation with the veteran band director, so I got a chance to learn directly from someone who had been teaching for a while. But the funny thing is, when I got the job, I showed up for work, dressed in a suit and tie and prim and proper, and he greeted me. He has this great smile. He said, "Hey, Mustafa, how you doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to work. Yeah. But, what do you want me to do?" And he gave me the keys, and he said, "I'll be back." He said, "I'll be back." So I'm like shocked, like, I'll be back. It's like my first day. Literally, he gave me the keys and he left. I don't know where he went. And he left. He left for the whole day. Literally the whole day. So, I had to run the marching band, I had to do the auxiliary, I had to teach all of the classes, and I had to teach chorus. I did band, but I had to teach chorus and piano and music theory, and it was a challenge, but I'm a hard worker, and I'm like thinking on my feet, like, what do I need to do? I need to organize, take some notes, do this or whatever, which can be overwhelming, but it was a great experience, and a great lesson. Like, always be ready. You never know what's going to happen. Always be ready.
Well, that's great advice too.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, he came back like smiling, like he had just went to eat at some really nice restaurant, and he was happy. But man, I really thank Ruben Cooper for that experience at American. So that was my first job. So I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the other jobs if you'd like to know.
Of course. But we want to know about, the challenge of being handed the keys and just you have to go. What took you out of teaching in a band room into being a recording artist? You still consider yourself a music educator.
Right.
What brought about that change, that blossom?
To be honest with you, I grew up with my dad, Melton Mustafa Sr., and my uncle, Jesse Jones Jr. Both of them are international artists, so I grew up listening to a high level of music all my life. But it wasn't just jazz. We had eclectic music going on all the time, all genres of classical music, everything. But I remember clearly when I graduated from Florida A&M University, I could literally read anything. You put it, I just was, I was a really good reader. I practiced a lot. I did all the literature. I felt very comfortable as a musician. And I remember my dad had a jazz gig, and he said, okay, well, come on and play with the band. I was playing second alto. Jesse Jones Jr. was playing lead alto, and we were playing at a jazz venue called O'Hara's in Fort Lauderdale. And this was my first gig. Now, mind you, I didn't do any jazz in college or anything like that. So, but I could play Flight of the Bumblebee. I knew every march that you could think of. I could read really, really well, so I felt very equipped. And I remember my uncle sitting next to him. He was like, "Yeah, man, yeah, this is my nephew right here. He's gonna play with us today. He's playing the book or whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, oh, man, I'm excited." And I'm sitting there getting ready to perform, and we opened up the books, and we started the first two. And I'm grooving with it. Well, at least I thought I was grooving with it. So my uncle, after we finished the song, my uncle looked at me and he was like, "What was that? What was that? Man, you sound like," I can't say what he said, but and I was like, "Man, for real?" I didn't say that to him, but I was shocked because I thought I was this like incredible musician. And this taught me that, okay, well, you can read music, but every genre has a particular style, a particular way of articulating. Can you swing? I didn't know anything about any of that stuff, because I was mainly classical oriented, especially the bassoon. So, I was embarrassed, but I sort of played it off. But I learned a lesson. Like, listen, okay, well, if you're gonna play in this, this genre, this type of music in this band, I need to go study some more. So I said, I'm gonna practice some more. Eventually, I started to get it a little bit, but that experience, it taught me that if I was gonna play outside of what I've been used to, then I need to prepare myself even more. Now, as far as the recording artists and things like that, I grew up watching my dad record with different, big bands, whether it's the Basie band or Jaco Pastorius or with his own stuff. And I was always that kid watching, the slides and the mixer, and I was fascinated with the knots. I would press it when nobody's looking. I was just really fascinated with that whole process. So I knew it was something I always eventually wanted to do. And as I graduated and I started to, become a teacher and things like that, I wanted to make sure that I did things that I was still passionate about. So I would, go with my dad's recording sessions, and I would watch him record, and I said to myself, okay, one day, I'm going to be the person that's directing this or doing this or whatever. Later on, I realized I had band director stuff inside of me. But as a kid, I was like, I want to be one telling everybody, and what is this thing right here that he's doing? I want to do that. I want to be that person or whatever. So after college, all of these things started coming to fruition. So I saw my dad at the recording studio, and I remember one day I said, "Dad, I'm going to record you." And, my dad never not supported me with anything. He always, supported, what I said, what I wanted to do and things like that. He was very supportive. But this particular time, he was like, okay, like kind of nonchalant. So I said, okay, Dad, I'm going to record you. And, that was the end of that conversation. So, but I didn't know much about recording as far as the technical stuff, mechanical license, digital license, and things like that, things of that nature. So I said, okay, I need to do some research. So, I started doing research. I studied about mechanical license, recording an engine, hiring an engineer, mixing and mastering, picking songs, length of songs, formats, CD formats, ADAT, all of these different things. And I studied, and maybe like a month later, I came back to Dad and was like, okay, I'm going to record you. I need you to practice these songs. So my dad looked at me, and he looked at me with like some type of shock and awe. But then he realized that I was serious, because I also gave him the dates. I was like, okay, these are the dates. We're going to do it at Outline Studio. We're going to be here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. This is the personnel that I want, to use. I need you to practice these songs. I want it in this format. And that started my, whole recording and producing type thing. So, yeah.
But your message seems to be, have a goal and prepare for it.
Right.
And that will serve you well. That will serve anyone well. What advice do you have? You've had all of these opportunities.
Right.
You opened the doors yourself, but you have had the opportunities. What is your advice to someone who doesn't have the connections that you have been blessed with?
Right.
How can they succeed in the desert of no private teachers in the area?
Right. I remember when I was studying at Florida A&M University, I would go to different band directors. I loved older people. I loved hanging out with my grandparents, my dad's friends. I just liked being a fly on the wall, listening to the stories and things like that. And I was like a sponge, listen to them. But one thing I would do is I would go to some of the older band directors and hang out with them. I don't know why I like doing that, but I just did. Mr. Norman Cox, Pascal, the great Kenneth Talbert. Yeah. So I remember going to Mr. Talbert, and Mr. Talbot always had these fantastic stories. He was a great storyteller. He just had a way with words, and Mustafa, man, your daddy used to write music for me when I was at Miami Central High School, and it's like he wore an Earth, Wind, and Fire drill. He just knew all of this stuff, and I remember talking to him. I said, I'm going to be graduating soon, and you have any advice for me? And Mr. Talbert, he was a very honest person, but he loved helping people. He was like, well, what's your style? What's your philosophy of teaching? What drives you? What moves you? And I had never really thought about those things before. What's important to you? What are your goals? And then he said, what do you want your band to look like and sound like? And I mean, of course you think of that, but you don't really think of it. I wasn't thinking of it in the deep, inner meaning of that particular question, but the quick answer was I wanted to be good. Of course everybody wants their band to be good, but what type of program, what do you want your group to look like? What are the philosophies of your teaching and stuff like that? So if I had to give advice to someone, I would say, what does this thing really mean to you? What's your philosophy of teaching? What do you want your group to look and sound like? What are your goals and things like that? And I started formulating different ideas of how I would go about teaching based on my philosophy of teaching, what I wanted the group to look like and to sound like. And, teaching in an inner city school was always a challenge because, the resources aren't there. So my biggest challenge when I graduated, and thinking back to what Mr. Kenneth Talbot, had talked to me about was, okay, I'm at this school. We have kids here. We have chairs and a couple of stands. I want the group to be good, but we can't even get good yet because we don't even have the appropriate resources. So after the advice of that I would give someone, you're a new director, what do you want it to look like? Then the next advice is, how do you get to that point? And what do you call success to you? So for me, I wanted to be able to put the kids in a situation where they were enjoying music and that it was meaningful to them, but not only to them, just to the community. This is a plus to the community, not to just the kid. And the whole time I'm enjoying it because I'm taking someone who never played an instrument, who we don't really have the resources to play this instrument or to afford an instrument or to fix it or even to buy reeds sometime, and I'm figuring it out as a director. So, I would say the advice I'll give you after you figure out what type of program is, what do you need for your program to be successful based on your goals of how you want the program to be ran. Is your goal to be at middle school and play grade 5 literature? Maybe it's not. Maybe your goal is to play one concert a year, or maybe your goal is to teach them how to come in a classroom and sit down without, talking or whatever. Figure out what that means to you. Develop a list of rules, expectations, goals, because I don't care what anybody says. Kids like structure. I just feel that way. And if you present it to them in the right format, then it's going to make everything so much better, so much meaningful. And these lessons that they learn in your class, they're going to be able to take it everywhere else they go. High school, college, work, parenting, all of these different things that you're outlining. So, that's my advice for new teachers.
Wow, that's great advice too. Through your lips, through Ken Tolbert.
Oh man.
Yes. I was always taken with how polite his students were.
Right.
The school could be in chaos. You walked into his band room.
Right.
You were always greeted.
Right.
Genteelly.
Right. That was my first lesson. I went to Miami Carol City, and we was a rowdy bunch of kids. It was a fun band, but when I went over to visit Mr. Talbert, no one, not one person, talked coming into the band room. They grabbed the instrument, they sat down, and they waited. And Mr. Talbert, he would be there. He would be like reading the newspaper, and he wouldn't look up not once. And eventually, he'll put the newspaper down and greet the class. And I just thought it was the most amazing thing in the world. So that was amazing.
That's expectations.
Expectations
Bring results. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Well, we're getting on toward the end of our interview. Is there something you wish you'd told us about that perhaps we missed?
Well, there are a couple of things. I'm going to talk fast because I think some of these things are really, really important. One thing is, I worked hard as a director, but, making sure that you talk to other directors, older directors, and get advice and go listen to different bands are very, very important. But the importance of solo and ensemble is tremendous. The importance of developing a band to go to a music festival, not particularly a competition, a festival, I think is really, really important. And I can say this for anybody that's planning on becoming an FBA judge. When I was in school, I remember going to FBA festivals and the band not doing well, and or a judge saying something really harshly to whoever's participating. And I remember clearly that some of the kids actually didn't come back to band that year. They were so, and not that they were saying anything, let me not say harshly or negative, they were being honest, but the way they said it was not what the student was accustomed to. So my perspective was different from some of my friends. I was going to practice no matter what, but some of my friends were only in band to have fun or to be around other kids or whatever. I wanted to learn Hendon or whatever. I was weird. But some of these kids, what the judge said to them affected them in such a way that they quit, or not knowing why they received a poor rating, when they practiced on a broken instrument or never had a private lesson, or their C# didn't work or didn't press, but they still went because they wanted to be a part of it. I would say make sure that if you're interested in becoming a judge, that you do it with love and care, because what you say to these kids is so meaningful, it's so important, and you can make and break a student. So if you have an opportunity to lift someone up, then do that. It's always a way to introduce information to someone that could make them feel better. Like, well, you know what? Thank you for coming. I really appreciate you coming. I know it probably was tough getting here, and I appreciate you coming. Now let's talk about some things that I want you to work on for next time. Okay, I want you to do this, and let me show you. Let me give you a lesson right now. Let's go. I'm going to show you how to do this. So every time I judge, I always take extra time to each kid, just to make them feel great about what they're doing, because I think that's really important.
Thank you. That is wonderful advice. Thank you for your time today and for your words of wisdom, whether they are yours or Ken Tolworth's. Now, who is the gentleman behind you in the photograph?
Wow, this is my dad, Melton Mustafa Sr., international artist, played with Count Basie Band, Duke Ellington Band, Frank Sinatra, Ray Charles Band. He played with everyone. And, one of my biggest advocates, and he loved music, and, I got into FBA. Actually, he was in FBA also. So, that's one of the reasons I wanted to get in there. Of course, I'm a band director, but I did a lot of things that my dad did. He's such a great role model.
Well, now it's time to say goodbye. Thank you again.
Hey.